In this town, there's no off-season. The news never stops, and neither do we. It's always game day in Cleveland with Andy Baskin and Daryl Ryder.
It is always game day in Cleveland. I'm Andy Baskin with wires in front of my face, just trying to make this thing look a little bit better for those of you that are watching on YouTube. But we do appreciate you listening on the Odyssey app. Again, I'm Andy Baskin. He's Daryl Ryder. And we are brought to you by Smiley One and Bryant, Northeast Ohio's premier heating and cooling solution. See all these wires I have in front of me? This is kind of crazy. Daryl, all right, speaking of crazy, we have an offensive coordinator. You didn't even laugh at my wire joke, so I see where this thing's going for half hour.
Well, I mean, if there's ever an opportunity for you to call attention to something that isn't working, that would be it right there.
What? This or my microphone? It's one of the two. So
I think the next podcast we do where everything's perfect might be the first.
Be the first. Yeah, I agree. All right. Tell me about Tommy Rees, the new offensive coordinator.
I mean, he's got a brilliant mind, football mind, according to Kevin Stefanski. That is why he promoted him. I think we talked about this on the previous podcast as far as his candidacy goes, Andy. He's very well respected in league circles. He's thought to be an NFL head coach.
Nick Saban loves him.
In waiting. Yeah, Nick Saban loves him. He was a finalist at North Carolina before they gave that job to Bill Belichick. Mike Vrabel, who worked with him here in Cleveland while Vrabel was a consultant with the team. Of course, Rees was the tight ends coach last year. There was talk that Vrabel wanted to bring him to New England to be the Patriots offensive coordinator. So Kevin Stefanski essentially doesn't let him out of the building, gives him the promotion. And as Stefanski wrote in his statement Wednesday afternoon, now is going to be counting on Rees to help him basically reimagine, revamp, redesign this Browns offense into a high-scoring, potent attack that it clearly was not this past season.
Will he call plays? I think that's the big question.
I don't think so. I think Rees will be tasked with working with whatever young quarterback they ultimately end up drafting, whether that's at number 2, whether that's later in the draft, as well as, similarly doing what Alex Van Pelt did, right? Help Stefanski draw up the offense, help Stefanski with game planning on a week-to-week basis, work with the quarterbacks in practice. I think that's going to be the scope of Rees's responsibilities.
All right, so it makes me wonder what happened during the regular season that Kevin didn't want to call plays anymore. Help me. Was that their way of just saying, okay, we're giving Ken Dorsey the opportunity here, even though we're not giving him, full strength, we're going to give him what happened during the regular season?
That was Kevin Stefanski stepping aside and watching the train fall off the tracks off the side of the cliff.
With ownership's approval, right? With the general manager's approval.
I think Kevin just made the decision that I think he told him, this is what I'm going to do, But
you don't do that if you don't have the confidence to know you're coming back the next season.
Well,
you're walking down the street of a 3-win year. I mean, why? Yeah. No head coach in the NFL is walking down the street of a 3-win year and making a change like that if they don't think that they're going to be the head coach next season.
Yeah, but maybe Kevin took some F at all. And just hey, he got his contract extension. He's going to get paid regardless. You wanted this guy here. He's completely destroyed the offense. It's his show. I'm stepping aside, hands off, and I'm just going to sit back and, watch the train wreck happen. I don't blame Kevin 100%. It wasn't salvageable, right? And so let Dorsey fall on his face, and then obviously the results being what they were on the field, and then the end result when it came to Dorsey's employment with the Browns, also pretty matter of fact, you're gone 1 year, you're one and done. Thanks for ruining what was a perfectly fine offense. But I really thought that Jason Lloyd did a really good job on The Athletic, basically outlining some of the stuff that I was hearing behind the scenes as well. And a lot of us were hearing behind the scenes. And that was that this wasn't tenable. That, players were sick and tired of the organization twisting themselves into pretzels to accommodate Deshaun Watson and at times his lack of football acumen and ability to learn a playbook and execute a playbook. Kevin Stefanski's unwillingness to hold Deshaun publicly accountable for not doing his job.
But he doesn't hold anybody publicly accountable. I don't think that's Deshaun-centric.
But when I say publicly accountable, Andy, I'm talking in meetings.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking when you're when you're up there and you're banging through film, right? Because I was told too that was a big frustration. Kevin would point out everyone else's mistakes, but he wouldn't point out Deshaun's. And I had players basically saying to me they paid $230 million for that.
Wow,
the guy that they gave the money to. So the lack of confidence in Deshaun was as plain as day. The lack of confidence in
I thought, the thing that was in Jason's piece, the line about Joe Flacco learning the playbook in 30 days and Deshaun having 2 years to do it and still couldn't do it. That to me was a very telling quote.
Well, and I knew that the Texans struggled with the same thing. And I posted this on X. Like, if I can find out this information, then why can't Andrew Berry? And then the other part of it too is why aren't you listening to the information? And this is the problem the Browns have had. Go back to years and years ago, right? When they spent $100,000 on that quarterback study and then they didn't bother listening to it, right? They don't listen to information that's right in front of them. Like, that's what's frustrating.
Why? What's the reason to not listen?
Ego.
To think that you're the smartest person. I guess that's it. Yeah,
100% ego.
But whose ego? Whose ego? Owner, general manager.
It's so ambiguous. We don't know who to hold accountable. Right? Is it Paul DePodesta's fault? Is it ownership's fault? Is it Andrew Berry's fault? Is it Kevin Stefanski's fault? We don't like it. Their thing is, well, it's a collective failure. We're all to blame. So we all share in it. Everybody gets to come back so we can keep doing the same wrong crap over and over again. Like it's insanity. They keep doing the same stuff over and over again and expecting different results instead of trusting information that's right in front of them. Barry does this with the draft all the time too. Ignores that's why I asked Andrew in the season-ending press conference if he was going to change his approach to red flags with players because he doesn't listen to red flags. Guys got off the field problems. Like I had heard stuff about Mike Hall off the field from Columbus.
Right.
And potential issues that could arise. And then guess what happened? Didn't get out of training camp without the potential issues arising. Again, if I can find this information out, why can't Andrew Berry? And why does Andrew Berry refuse to listen to it? That is the biggest problem with the Cleveland Browns right now, aside the fact they don't have a quarterback that's worth a damn. Like, that's the biggest problem, is Andrew Berry takes too many chances on guys, and some of those guys aren't worth taking the chance. You can make an argument because Mike Hall was a mid-round pick. The juice is worth the squeeze. You look at the way Mike Hall was playing, Andy, he looks like he's going to be a really good football player.
For sure. Yeah, he seems like he could be one of their best picks.
Right, but you're assuming that he's going to behave himself off the field so he remains available. And he's going to put himself in situations that don't lead to problems, right? Mm-hmm. And we already saw right out of the gate, boom, suspended 5 weeks for off the field. And here's the thing, with what he was originally accused of, that dude got off easy. Let's be very honest about that.
Well, again, and you said this in the beginning, we don't actually know everything that happened, right? And you got to sometimes you got to wait for the facts.
That's why I said, Andy, based on what he was accused of. The key word, accused of. But, it wasn't good. So, so that's what we learned from Jason Lloyd. The locker room has no faith or belief in Deshaun Watson. They're sick of the guy. And there's no way they can go back to him now.
I want to talk more about this. There was also more Dome news that came out, so we'll talk about all those straight ahead. It's always game day in Cleveland. All right, our weekly journey through the offseason for the Browns as we watch other teams in the playoffs. It's called It's Always Game Day in Cleveland. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. Thanks for listening on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, we are also available on YouTube, and we are brought to you by our good friends at Smiley One and Bryant, Northeast Ohio's premier heating and cooling solution. I do want to dive a little bit more into the Deshaun Watson story, the Jason Lloyd story. So you had said you had been hearing things for a lot of the part of the season, Jason was able to verify and put to pen to ink, or ink to paper. Sorry, so give me the. I know we talked a little bit about like the one quote where it was said that Joe Flacco learned the system in 30 days, and Deshaun was 2 years in and still didn't understand it. Yeah. What else came out of that story that were you kicking around or had been just kind of trying to uncover the leaves?
Well, I mean, just the general frustration with the, how the organization, and understandably so, when you invest $230 million in a guy, you're going to do everything possible to support that investment, right? Mm-hmm. But players just got fed up with it because the guy wasn't doing what he was supposed to do or knowing what he was supposed to know and performing in a manner in which he was supposed to perform. And, it was negatively affecting things. They got rid of Alex Van Pelt to bring in, Ken Dorsey. And that was a disaster, right?
Right.
That contributed to Bill Callahan deciding to peace out and go work with his son after originally he was going to stay. And then AVP got fired. And all of a sudden, Bill's like, see you later. And that's not to say that still wouldn't have happened.
Did you hear that prior to the piece, though? I'm just curious about
that. I had heard that there.
Because hang on, before you even get to your answer, like I've never heard. We all knew Bill Callahan was really good, and we had heard a lot of good things about him. But I'm not trying to belittle his position and what he was doing, but it's offensive line coach. Like, and then we saw what the offensive line looked like, and then they were getting injured and all these other things. And Bill Callahan had a much different standard than what we watched this season. And so, but to me, I just thought it was super interesting that the Callahan name kept coming back and back and back and back all season long.
Yeah.
And then I'm saying to myself, man, it's still an offensive line coach. It's not like it's a head coach or a coordinator. So that's why I found it fascinating that everyone wanted to say he's gone. And I thought, well, he wanted to go coach with his son. I think most of us thought that, and no one would have a problem with that.
Yeah, but look at how things function even with injuries when Callahan was here. Guys would be plugged and played, and there wouldn't be drop-off.
Right.
Okay? That was the biggest change this year. Not only did they scrap the wide zone blocking scheme, which, by the way, the offensive line was built for, okay,
right. Mm-hmm.
to whatever the hell crap they ran this past season, but when they went to plug and play guys in for injured players, it was a catastrophe. And then also, too, you had a quarterback like Deshaun Watson who would just run into sacks all the time because he wasn't taking the right depths and reads and progressions that he, was supposed to be doing. So it compounds itself. And, while I had not heard that the firing of Van Pelt led to Callahan leaving, I did hear that the firing of Van Pelt and replacing him with Ken Dorsey, there are a lot of folks in the building that weren't all that crazy about
trying to figure out why they did this, right? Yeah, I get it. No, I understand.
Why did they break a perfectly good offense? And the reason
why?
Because of Deshaun Watson. Because Deshaun was struggling with the previous offense. And so let's bring in a guy who's worked with quarterbacks with his skill set, guys like Cam Newton, right? That, can off schedule. Here's the thing. And this goes back to his time with the Texans, because I've had people say, well, Daryl, he had no problem making plays in Houston. Go back and look at where he had his success in Houston. It was all off schedule. That's where Deshaun was at his best.
Right.
When he was doing stuff off schedule. Well, that's not how the NFL works a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And Kevin Stefanski's offense, let's be honest about it, is an on-schedule offense. There's a lot of timing routes built into Stefanski's offense, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why it looks so good with Joe Flacco. Because Joe Flacco, I had players tell me this last year about Flacco. They're like, the ball is where it's supposed to be when it's supposed to be there. And guys are getting to where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be. So voila, the offense looks like a high-powered offense all of a sudden.
Sure. Makes sense.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just basically what Jason was able to write, and it was outstanding, was not only, everything and more from what myself and others had heard, but just really expanding upon it, right? And providing more detail and more context to it. Like you said about Flacco learning the playbook in 30 days and Deshaun couldn't learn it in 2 freaking years. And things like that. That's important stuff. And that's why I resurrected Wednesday morning on my X feed, the Jack Conklin video in which Conklin was talking about, maybe tailoring things to one guy is not the right way to go with this. Maybe going away from a wide zone blocking scheme, which, by the way, this offensive line was built for by the personnel department, was not the smartest thing to do. You see what I'm saying? So,
oh no, totally. Yeah.
Conklin said a lot without throwing people under the bus specifically, but what he's referring to, who he's talking about. And so, Jason's article just basically really supported, what Conklin had to say in a very diplomatic fashion at the end of this.
Hey, Daryl, where do you think we are with the injury right now? Where are we? Are the Browns we haven't heard more about the injury and what's going on with this thing, and could there be a path that I'm still wondering, because has anyone come out and said exactly what happened on the re-injury?
No, just he rolled his ankle while in Miami.
That's it.
You can roll your ankle doing. I can roll my ankle getting out of a shower. That's not a violation of a contract. I know. See, what's happening is analysts and Browns fans they're trying to find a way for the Browns to get out of this contract. Right?
Yeah, that's my point on this.
Yeah, I know, and I get it, but it sounds great in theory, but you have to prove it. And then also, too, do you really want to go down that path to try and prove it? Do you want to trigger agreement?
No, I thought Ken Carman brought up a good point when you talk about Deshaun's agent. If you're trying to worm your way out of a contract, and I don't know if worm your way is the right way to put this, but now all of a sudden it's who wants to come play for you, right? If it's a battle between the Browns and somebody else, and the Browns give you this amazing contract, and people are like, remember what they did to Deshaun? It's a very slippery slope.
Do you think anyone's gonna really feel bad if the Browns try to get out of that contract, though?
No. I understand what you're saying. But as a player.
Right.
I put it this way. If I was sitting in any other NFL office and I knew it was down to the Browns and me, and I was offering you, let's just say 20, and they were offering you 25, and you'd be like, well, do you remember the time that they walked away from a contract that was fully guaranteed, that they did a lot of research to try, so I do think that the whispers sometimes become, big yell.
But and so you just, and again, everyone wanted to jump on and say, well, he was dancing on TikTok and that's what led to it. And you have to.
He didn't look like he was dancing very much. He was just kind of
But my point is, you have to be very careful when you're making accusations like that.
100%. 100%. All right.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't know how he did it. And again, I've talked to people that people have called our radio station to mention, hey, I had to have double Achilles surgery.
I've heard. Yeah.
And, I was walking down the sidewalk one day and the thing popped again a couple of months later.
Wow.
It's again, I understand the conversation. I understand why people are looking for an off ramp for the Browns. I will say this, and people need to understand, to your point, right? Andrew Berry conducts himself very professionally.
Sure.
And he's brought a lot of respect back from league circles towards the Browns with the way and the manner in which he conducts business. I can be critical of some of his moves he's made. I can be critical of the fact that he ignores red flags with guys and gives second chances and third chances and stuff like that. The one thing that I will never criticize him for is his professionalism, because that's unfounded and unfair. He's very professional in his job. He's very professional in how he presents himself in front of cameras and microphones. He's very professional in how he presents himself as a representative of the Browns as their top football executive in league circles. He's very professional in how he negotiates contracts. He's very professional in how he deals with intricacies that come with those contracts in situations that pop up. And look at I keep going back to the Odell situation. He was under no legal obligation to do Odell Beckham Jr. a solid there and let him get out of that contract and go to the Rams and win a Super Bowl. But Andrew Berry did that because he felt it was the right thing to do for the player. And that's one of the things that, one of the, I guess, I don't want to say North Star, but it's one of the ways in which Andrew Berry operates. So I honestly, unless the Browns have some serious tangible evidence that Deshaun Watson did something to violate the terms of his contract or the terms of his, rehab program or whatever, I do not anticipate that Andrew Berry is going to try and withhold or try and recoup any money, because the contract's insured. The Browns will get an insurance payment, reimbursement for injury. And then, of course, they'll also get a salary cap rebate, assuming he is unable to play in 2025, which is my belief. I think he's played his last snap with the Browns. He's done, will not play this season, and everybody's going to be able to move on from this night.
Yeah, I wasn't convinced that, but now I am. All right, let's come back. It sounds like the Browns City Cleveland can do a little time in court. Let's find out what that's all about. It's always game day in Cleveland. It's always game day in Cleveland, brought to you by Smiley One and Bryant, Northeast Ohio's premier heating and cooling solution. Daryl, the city has now decided to sue the Browns. Weren't the Browns already suing the city of Cleveland to find out what this Art Modell law is all about, and where are we at in this thing? Because now it's I don't know why either side would help either side moving forward, because it has become completely contentious.
Yeah, this has gotten as ugly as it gets. The difference in the suits here are the venue, number one, and then number two, the remedies sought within the suits. The Browns sued in federal court, U.S. District Court, wanting basically a declarative judgment that the Modell law is unconstitutional, that as long as they fulfill the terms of the lease, they should, once that lease expires, be free to play football wherever they want to play. So the city of Cleveland filed a lawsuit Tuesday in Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas. The city filed the suit under 3 counts: violation of the Modell law, breach of contract, and declaratory judgment and injunctive relief. And the translations are violation of Modell law and the fact that the Browns are not abiding by that law. The breach of contract has to do with the violation of the lease, which stipulates that the team will abide by any laws or ordinances. And
which would be the Modell law?
Which is which includes the Modell law.
So 2 is based on 1.
Right. And then the declaratory judgment and injunctive relief is multifaceted. The city would like financial damages. They would like reimbursement for attorneys and other costs. They would also like an injunction to block any potential funding that the Browns may gather for the new dome in Brook Park.
From public funds, right? Like if the Browns want to get a loan, they can't stop that. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And then also, but this is in lieu of satisfying the Modell law. So I was able to finally get some clarity on the Modell law.
Yeah, I saw your tweet, your social media. Go ahead. What happened there?
Well, it finally dawned on me how to fix this. So I basically wrote 1,000 words on the station website on how to fix this and what it's going to take to fix this. Okay. So in layman's terms, what the Modell law says, that a team cannot stop playing their games in a taxpayer subsidized stadium unless they enter into an agreement with the
Cleveland.
The municipality, which is Cleveland, to change venues, or they give the municipality 6 months notice of the intent to cease playing those games in the facility, and simultaneously allowing the municipality or individuals or groups an opportunity to buy the team. So now, again,
that's how the Haslams got the crew, right?
Right. So the issue is, because I went back to the city of Cleveland and I said, well, wait a minute. The Browns are fulfilling the terms of the lease. They're not leaving early. So how is this a violation of the Modell law? Once the lease is completed and been satisfied, the monies, the taxpayer funds toward the stadium will no longer be in play. The stadium will be paid in full. Right. So how does this apply? And the response that I got from the city really brought back the clause that I had been overlooking.
Okay.
And that was the permission clause. You can move, you can leave, but you have to get permission. So the only way for the Browns to get permission from the city of Cleveland to build in Brook Park and leave is if they write a check to the city of Cleveland. And that's what this lawsuit is ultimately about. The city of Cleveland wants money from the Cleveland Browns. Okay. They don't want to hold them hostage beyond 2028 in the lease, because that was the first thing. I'll read the, let me read this response. Let me pull this up on X from the city to my question. The first sentence that I got back was, the Browns are not obligated to sign a new lease. They're obligated to follow the law. And the law is triggered by accepting the benefits of a taxpayer-supported stadium. Once the team accepts these benefits, they can't take the money and leave. If they're going to leave, they either need to get the consent of the city or permit an opportunity for a local group to purchase the team. Whether the debt is paid or not paid or never existent is not relevant. The key point is the taxpayers paid for the debt. So what it comes down to is the city wants to give the Browns permission to leave after the lease expires. And the only way they're going to do that is if the Haslams break out the checkbook and put a lot of zeros in front of the decimal point and make it out to the city of Cleveland. That's what this is about, Andy. And that lawsuit is pressure, because you're now at the mercy of the courts. You know, that's why the Browns raced to federal court to get this, to try.
And the federal court hasn't said anything yet,
right?
No,
well, because the city wanted to delay to hire law firms to, get their case together and all that. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing too is the city wants to start running the clock on this project. Okay.
Okay. Let me ask you another question. Can the federal court, can they tell the city to pound salt?
Yes. Okay. That's why the Browns went to federal court, right? Because federal supersedes state law. Okay. Right. So this is a state law. So the reason why the timing is important here too, right? That's why the Browns wanted to hurry up and get this in the court system to get this ruling, because time is of the essence.
It's money.
Right. Well, no, they're currently in the process of acquiring the land in Brook Park. They're making payments to acquire. They haven't closed on it yet. They're still making the payments, but they're going through that process to acquire the land. They're also trying to negotiate with the county to get some public funding. They're trying to negotiate with Brook Park to get public funding. And they're trying to negotiate with the state of Ohio to get public funding. As part of this lawsuit, the city is, let's say it's announced, for the sake of conversation, Andy, let's say that the Browns get the $600 million in public funding that they're requesting from the state of Ohio, right?
From the state, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Well, what the city wants is that to be halted, right? So the Browns can't collect on that yet until this case is resolved.
But the city can't tell the state what to do.
Yeah, well, the court can, though. And that's this lawsuit. They want the court to
tell the state, don't give them any money.
Right. Okay. They want injunctive relief there. They don't want any money going to the Browns. They want to force the Browns to settle with them. That's what this lawsuit's about. And what do court cases cost? They cost time. They cost money. Right. So if this is jammed up in the court system, and let's be honest about the court system, it marches to the beat of their own drum. Okay. So now, while the Browns are trying to lobby for all this funding, you've got these two lawsuits in the background here that are unresolved. And so that ties up the process. Well, tying up the process now could also cost the Browns on the back end, because they have a timeline. They have
cost overruns, all those things. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
They have a timeline to secure the funding. They have a timeline to close on the property. They have a timeline to break ground. They have a timeline to complete construction and open by August of 2029, right?
Right.
Well, this thing gets tied up in the courts for a while. That messes with the timeline. Well, what happens with timelines? It builds pressure. And so if this gets tied up in court, like the city of Cleveland does not want this resolved tomorrow.
What is next, though? What's next? The feds have to come in and say that's their rulings first, probably, right?
Well, either or. I mean, it has to be heard. Both cases have to be heard. That's the thing.
So the federal case hasn't even been heard yet.
Correct.
Okay. Right.
Like,
Okay.
got to get heard first. Same thing in the county. It's got to get heard. So these cases have to be heard. They have to be ruled on. They have to be resolved, right? If you're the city of Cleveland right now, you want the court to drag its feet and take its time, because the longer the court takes into the year of 2025 here, the more pressure on the Browns builds to just settle this thing and get it over with. And
I'm assuming there are only two other ways to make this thing go faster, and I don't know if there's got to be an actual case that's hit the bench yet, but and I'm just going back to basic civics,
right?
That could, if the state Supreme Court wanted to hop in early and make a decision, they could, or federal Supreme Court too.
The only time the state Supreme Court gets involved is through the appeal process.
Is that true of just the state of Ohio? Because that's not true federal.
Well, no, federal. It had to all the stuff has to go through appeals process. You can't go straight to the Supreme Court. You can try. You can make a request, but very rarely does that get granted. No,
I know it's very rare that it gets granted, but I always thought that if the Fed saw a case that they thought needed to be decided, they could just pull it up.
And I don't want to turn this into politics, but
that's where I'm kind of thinking in the back of my head. I'm like, what's the political stream?
The legal action that was taken against President-elect Trump, right?
Right.
It had to go through the various courts before it got to the Supreme Court for them to rule on it, and then the Supreme Court ruled on it. You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I mean, but sometimes the Supreme Court doesn't need to rule. Like, if the appellate court says something and the Supreme Court looks at the case
and then
there's nothing, that means they think that means the appellate court was correct.
No, what it is
no, that's true.
If the appellate court rules, and you don't like the ruling, you then appeal to the next level. The court system is like a ladder.
Right, I understand, but what I'm saying
is, each time you appeal, you're going up the ladder, and that's what President-elect Trump kept doing. Is he kept, or the United States government, they would appeal the rulings, and then ultimately it got to the Supreme Court. So what's going to happen is,
what I'm saying though is, Daryl, if the Supreme Court chooses not to take a case, they're agreeing with the last appellate court. That's
correct.
What it is. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. If they choose not to take the case.
All right. Well, this all sucks because it has nothing to do with football. So just figure it out and let's get it done. Can we stop with the politics? Hey, he's Daryl Ryder. Evan O'Brien is our producer. We do appreciate you. So, Daryl, what do you think? We'll come back next week with 2 more episodes, and we'll get everybody up to speed next week on As the Browns Turn, right?
Is that what, I don't know. Can we call is that the new name of the podcast? Is the Browns Turn?
Maybe they'll let us use that one. He's Daryl Ryder. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. It's always game day in Cleveland.